Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from Capital One Bank and Perfect Building Maintenance, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Cushman and Wakefield, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, New York Community Bank, Bank of America, Kilroy Metal Products, New York's Window Company. Additional funding is provided by Akron Gold Brothers, LLC, Briarwood Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Investment Fund, Essex Capital Partners, Excel Realty Advisors, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, GVA Williams, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Herrick Feinstein, LLP, Helmsley Spear, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, John Katzimatidis, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Madison Realty Capital, Marcus and Millichap, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sterling and Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, the Moynihan Group.
Hello, my name is Michael Stoller. New York City, the home of all this construction, or should I say the home of the previous construction. Today, there's a little crisis out there. The economy's a little difficult. And according to one of my guests over here, there are a lot of cranes sitting vacant. They don't have to be built in New York. But today I have assembled literally the guys who build New York City, the developer, the contractors who build New York City. My guests today include Jeffrey Levine, chairman of the board of Douglaston Development and also Levine Builders. Tony Dolce, managing member of R.C. Dolner. Joel Pickett, chairman of Gotham Construction. And last but not least, we always like to have a couple of City College and other graduates over here. Frank Siami, chairman of Siami Construction. So I'm not even going to talk to you because you've been on the show too many times and you always tell the story the way you want. What's happening today in the construction business in New York?
Well, as you said, there is a real change. It's unbelievable. 2 years ago, I think it was Dick Anderson at the Building Congress who called this white hot. The industry was white hot, and it was. I think sales in 2008 ended up being around 33 billion, 33.8 billion. 2009, it's looking to be 33.4 billion. And looking to 2010, something like 26.2 billion.
So in 2010, you and Joel and Tony and maybe Jeff, but he's building he's developing in Williamsburg. You can all take an extended vacation, perhaps.
It looks that way.
I think that there's a section in the Bible that there was 7 good years, and then you have to put away for 7 bad years, okay? How bad is it out there, Tony?
It's bad. There is no money. And when you say that there is no money, it's hard to get your hands around that or your brain around it, that there is no money out there being lent to developers to build just about anything. And I don't have to tell you, but our business runs on money, and there is none.
Joel, you're a 4th or a 5th generation builder developer?
4th.
He's so old, he's the 4th and the 5th.
Please, cameraman, okay, we have a wall over here. In your career,
yes,
have you seen it this difficult?
No. I mean, I've been through a number. Yeah, I've been through a lot, 70s and before, and certainly the 80s. And I have never seen anything like this that is so pervasive, and because it's everything. It's the total economy, it's jobs, it's just not real estate, it's worldwide. And there's no liquidity, so there's no money around to do anything. And then if there were money around, I don't know if numbers work anyway to market the product that we would put up.
The reality is, as I said to you earlier today, in July of '07, when, for the most part, the economy seemed to be chugging along, and the subprime bubble started to move to the top of the pot, the banks recognized that the lending industry and the housing industry, as a result of these mortgage mechanisms, were in dire straits. And they basically pulled the plug at that time on all financing. So if you did not have a project finance prior to July of '07, you couldn't get a commitment going forward. That's why the work that we all have on our plate, and the construction trades in New York are still very busy, because a number of these projects are mid or in the final stages of construction. But for the first time in my construction career, I see the working men on the job concerned about where they're going next.
But you know, that really relates to something. We were talking before the show with Tony, who does work in New York and New Jersey, that there's a difference in price for construction, for projects over here. And you were talking prior, when I saw you earlier today, you were talking that the cost per hour for a union electrician is $100 an hour plus benefits. I mean, construction costs have been going out of the sky limit.
You know, let me just correct you. The $100 an hour is inclusive of benefits, exclusive of the contractor's overhead and profit. So you can very often be charged as much as $120 an hour for an electrician for straight time on a union construction project in New York. But to answer your question, the union is part of the problem. And as we're speaking here right now, Joel and I, some years ago, attended the AFL-CIO Building Trade Council down in Florida, where we spoke to the rank and file of the business delegates down there. And we saw this on the wall. We saw the fact that union construction has allowed certain aspects of their business to go away from their plate. First, it was the affordable rehabs and low-rise and low-density work, where there was this quiet understanding between the city and the state, and for the most part the federal government, that it was cheaper to build affordable housing in lower economic demographic areas with non-union work than it was with union. And the low-rise, mid-rise nature of those jobs allowed that to become the case. The unions were busy, and they let it happen. Rather than adjusting themselves to the market condition, they allowed the market condition to push them out.
Okay, let me preface to my audience, all four of you are union contractors. You build all union work, and that's one situation. But I really want to ask, you know, anyone who wants to answer except for Jeff, what is really the difference in your mind between a union job and a non-union job? Price and construction and quality.
Well, yeah, I think that you have a good labor pool in union. You know, I am not as down on the unions as maybe some of the folks here are, but I do think the work rules have to change. The jurisdictional issues are big, and I think that that's something that really should be looked at in terms of driving the price of union wages up. The wage itself is not that much higher than the non-union wage, but when you get the benefits and you get all the work rules, it really drives it higher. And I think that it was working because New York, they were paying more than in New Jersey for the final product. You know, so it was always an issue of supply and demand. And quite honestly, I think, Jill, you were exactly right. There's no market. So even if you could save 20% or whatever you could save doing it non-union.
But you know, Frank, let's say hypothetically, because land isn't trading in New York City, let's say somebody was willing to donate the land in a project or sell the land at a lower price. Right. And there were, as some people have said on my show, big is bad. Mike Fascitelli said, large jobs I can't get done. But let's say I had a $30 million job in a reasonable location that could work as a rental. Wouldn't it be a big difference?
Yeah, I think the real concern is we've been a union contractor. It's my hope we can remain a union contractor. Problem is that the only mortgages you can get, if you can get anything at this point, is stuff that's $50 million and below. And I don't care if it's more than that. The issue is that the union costs are too high. And what's happening as a result of that is we are going to be pushed so that we cannot do any work. We will not be competitive because any developer who wants to build a product will not be able to make the numbers work given what the components are, which are the land costs, which will, like you said, there's not much commerce, but they're going to have to go down. And the same way the construction costs are going to have to go down. And we sincerely hope, because what's going to happen is not only are we going to, the contractors, the union contractors, not going to get any product, the men on the job aren't going to have any jobs. And there's been a series of negotiations with the unions to try to as Frank alluded to, try to change work rules, try to get things more so that they line up, that they work, and it's a work in progress, and it's very slow.
But you know, Tony, you were saying you do work in New Jersey, and some of it's an open shop. And what do you mean by an open shop?
It's the right to work in the state of New Jersey, where non-union and union work hand in hand, and it functions.
But the cost savings. I mean, I've done shows in New Jersey with major developers, SJP, McCallie, you know, Leverett, and they build open shop.
Right.
And they always say to me, the cost is, you know, we can build an office building for $400 a foot. You can't build an office building in New York for $400 a foot. You can't build an apartment house for $400 a foot. So, you know, as Joel alluded before, we're in a terrible economic crisis now. Where all this situation, how do we get out of this rut? How do we get out of the rut? Because if 2008 was a good year for the construction. 2007, 2008, 2009, you still have the fall off. You still have the work to conclude. 2010. Forget the stimulus program and anything else. There's not going to be jobs.
Well, right. The jobs are predicted to go from 130,000 to 100,000 in the industry. And I think you're exactly right. Look, 3 years ago, when we were in Florida at the same meetings that you mentioned, Jeff, I was saying that you're at an inflection point. I don't know if you ever read the book, Only the Paranoid Survive. Andy Grove wrote it, and he basically said, CCNY, I read it when I was going out to visit him for a donation. In any case, but he said it's an inflection point. Where the small lumberyard didn't see Home Depot coming. The grocery shop didn't see the supermarket coming. If the unions in New York don't see the non-union shops coming, they're going to really be out of business.
They have
and
seen
I think they can see it, but they're really seeing it.
They've been able to ignore it up until now.
Now they're recognizing.
We've said to them, we sat, Joel and I, at the Real Estate Board of New York meetings with delegates from the Concrete League, from the Electricians Union, and we told them point blank that unless they bend, they are going to break. Yeah. They ceded away the affordable work, the outer borough work, you know, both Brooklyn, Queens, Staten Island, and Bronx. There's 90% of the work that was done in the outer boroughs is non-union. That's incredible, you know, and that is actually happening now in Manhattan itself.
See, I think the common interest is we're getting into an area that's going to be survival for union contractors and survival for the unions.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
And that's really going to be the issue.
It's much bigger than union or non-union. As Joel said, even if the prices fell, is there really a market out there? You know, when you can purchase a note on a piece of property for less than the cost to build that piece of property, it's pretty frightening. Yeah. You know, so why should I build anything if I could already buy something?
I'll relate this to a specific. I did a symposium a couple weeks ago. I had Mike Fascitelli of Vornado on it, and 2 years ago they acquired 350 Park Avenue. They basically acquired the property to knock it down because of its location. They paid $1,150 a foot for the property. Today, the property, you know, based on what Boston Properties has written down and everything else, the property is maybe worth $600 a foot, if it's that. So, you know, I remember one of my guests who's always on the show over here, then he says, but you know, the property is worth this. It's not that way anymore. No. You know, it's a different case. So what's going to happen? How do we stimulate the churning, the economic system, so your guys could be doing more work in the city of New York?
Two things have to happen, and so they're happening of its own accord. Obviously, whether it's the TARP plan or the new plan announced by Geithner today, or frankly the stimulus plan, the economy needs to get back on its feet. You need to stop losing jobs, and then you will see corporate profits return and confidence start to come back to the market. House prices and commercial office building prices have fallen pretty precipitously, as much as 30% in parts of the country, not quite so much here in New York. The falling of housing prices has made housing affordability much greater. That increased affordability, coupled with the low interest rates, will eventually drive people back to buy housing because the need to have a place to live is eternal. Right. The unions have to make accommodations if they want to be part of this revival when it occurs. And what I mean by that is they have to address the holy grail of wages and fringe benefits, which thus far they've been unable to do. They're down in Florida now trying to do that. I hope, for all of us' sake, that they succeed in that effort, because frankly speaking, union contractors using union labor have been proven to be safer, more administratively capable, and can deliver a better quality job in a quicker time period.
Okay,
but unfortunately, you need the price to be in order to be in business.
But here's the situation. I know of buildings being built in Manhattan because, as you say, the outer boroughs, it's non-union country. It's been over there. There are buildings being built in Manhattan by non-union contractors, or maybe the superstructure is being built by union and the balance isn't being done by that, where there is a 25 to a 30% difference. So, I mean, if I'm a developer, I'm going to go and look at...
You got it.
I
That's
gotta
exactly
go
what
look
we're
at
saying.
Yeah, but
No choice.
it depends on the non-union contractor. We were mentioning earlier that I did a job, foundations, and then let it go non-union because the prices were just out of whack. That particular developer came back for another project, wanted to use union. There's time. Time is money. Especially when there's a market on fire. A lot of these developers may be in trouble now because they didn't finish having
Frank,
used
I think
non-union developers.
You know what? That's a very interesting point, because this development that I know on the east side near 86th Street, they said that when you pour concrete for union, you can pour 3 floors a week maybe, and when you do non-union, it's 2 floors a week. It's a different thing.
Well,
it's
less
like in
than that,
Philadelphia,
depending on the contract.
right? Depending on the situation.
But you also have to balance things. Right now, for example, if you are in construction, you have very cheap interest rates. So construction costs...
A 3-day cycle is not the end of the year.
A 2-day, exactly. 2-day cycle isn't so bad when you're paying less for your money.
Right, but the big question is why, when you're ready to be completed, let's say it's a condo, the market is still not there. I mean, the new condos that are being delivered in 2008, not in the early part of 2009, not the 2009, the Edge project that we're talking about. You know, those situations, you got nobody's going into the sales offices. I hear these stories. Oh yeah, we had 30 people this week. We had 20. Yeah, they're going for the cappuccino.
No, you're paraphrasing me. We're not serving cappuccino. The demand is there. The demand is there. People are out
come on,
looking.
you know, stop.
They are just
you're drinking the Kool-Aid over there.
It's a price point.
No,
price
it's not
point.
even a price point right
What
now.
is it?
People are afraid to
Exactly.
exercise their will to buy
Exactly.
because of the uncertainty about the economy
Correct.
and the future.
That's correct.
Right.
As soon as
Jeffrey
that
is
stabilizes,
absolutely right.
people are having
would you-
babies,
wait a
people are
second.
getting divorced, people are retiring, they
second.
want to live in an urban
wait
fabric.
a second. Would you be
People wanna
buying?
live here.
Would you be buying an apartment today when you know half the? I know a lot
I will
of
tell
people
you
in the
something.
banking
As a
people.
business person, I have made my best purchases of real estate when there were no buyers. When everybody wants to buy,
Can I have an
you had to be
apple?
a
Can I have
real
an apple?
genius.
I want
You
an
had to
apple.
be a real genius to buy an apartment in 2005 and 2006.
Optimist.
I thought you could do something else with it.
Optimism is good.
No.
Optimism is contagious.
I believe
And-
that if you buy an apartment in the next year or two, and I don't know when the economy is going to turn around, that you will look back on this as having been a very opportunistic time because of the increased affordability, the low interest rates, and I believe you will be satisfied with your purchase in the next year or two.
We love New York with the apple, but let me
Absolutely.
say something. A lot of people there are, there are private equity funds that I came out of, and other people who are sitting on the sidelines with close to $10–20 billion over there. And their question, Jeffrey, is they agree with you, and I agree that there's a time to buy. The question is they're not sure when the falling the apple is.
Exactly.
They're not ready for the time. So that's what's happening, and the same thing with the condo buyers who are saying, you know what, I could buy it today. But they don't know. Maybe the price is going to go down. I'm not disagreeing. You should buy. The whole question is everybody is in this situation. Well, let me hold the apple. I'm not waiting until it really goes down to the bottom.
Yeah.
But it's the whole thing. It's not just whether they should buy. It's their jobs. It's the whole economy. They're
Joel,
just
that's the point.
afraid of everything.
Exactly.
I
Right.
mean, unfortunately, each day I get a phone call from another banker saying I'm unemployed.
Yeah.
So let's take a situation. A banker, he's in his 40s, he's in his 50s, male or female, they can't get that job. They were working for the German bank. They were working over here. So they're saying, what am I going to do?
Right.
And people are... The rental building, you're in rental buildings. You own some rental buildings. Rents are going down in some of these buildings. You're giving additional concessions. So what do you, as I said 2 weeks ago when I had a developer show, your builders, your contractors, what do you do if you don't have work? I'm not being facetious.
I'll give you an answer. I mean, the reality is, just the way
Are
the
you going to
banks...
go on the bread line with them?
No bread lines. Just the way the banks are willing to lend on smaller deals with more equity, we, as contractors, make a decision. Look, as a contractor, your most important resource, and my staff will be very happy for me to say this, are your people.
Right.
We have, all of us are in business for many years. Joel, for many, many centuries, we have
It's just so bad.
we have accumulated a group of people who are very competent and capable of what they do. And our first goal as a business person in a downturn is to keep those good staff so that when it does turn around, you have the capability to perform. And you take smaller projects, you cut tighter margins, cover your overheads, which is the nature of this industry.
I mean, you also expand to different markets. You know, we have said that now we'll go 250 miles. I never wanted to have on my card London or Paris or even Princeton, New Jersey. But we had been asked in the past to
Hold on a
follow.
second. Unfortunately, he's building in New Jersey.
Okay.
No, Frank, there's plenty
No,
of
we
work.
would
No,
follow.
Frank, there's plenty of not work in New Jersey.
No.
Jersey is one of the worst markets today.
No, but you know, we're only focusing on residential development. What about institutional work? And the sad thing is that
You
the
have issues there
endowments have
too,
gone
though, Frank.
down.
The
Right.
endowments have
Wait
gone
The
a second.
endowments have
Joel,
gone down.
Joel was on a show a couple weeks ago on the Trustee show.
Right.
There are jobs, okay? Memorial Sloan Kettering is working on a job. They stopped the construction in the middle. They just closed it off. These jobs aren't taking place. The institutional jobs aren't happening.
Well, that's,
Not all of them. Mike.
No, but some of them is still happening.
Jeffrey said something. He said they're afraid, and there's the word you'd like to say uncertain, you don't know, but the word I've been hearing lately is fear. You talk to developers and they said they're frightened, and I think what has to happen is that mindset has to be changed, and the only way you're going to change that is through time and some good events, and you know what, we'll survive.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
That's
we
the
went
thing.
through we went through the 90s, 91,
Right.
92.
Well, listen, it
We
was
survived.
only 8 years ago we lived through what I think was one of the most psychologically important days of our life, September 11th here in New York.
Right.
There were people who were frightened to death about the exodus of jobs, the fear of future terrorism, and guess what? In a shorter time than I ever could have imagined, we all adjusted to the change,
But you know,
and we're here and we love it.
in
Jeffrey,
19
you know what's interesting? I'm sorry, Frank. Go.
Good news, in 1996, Trump bought 40 Wall Street, 1 million square feet, for $5 million. That building today is worth $400 or $500 million in this market.
When you have a crisis like this,
There are opportunities.
there are opportunities. And if you follow this through history, through the chaos, there will be people who will make fortunes.
Right.
But there will be people who will lose fortunes.
But you know,
and the question is, which
But
side you want to be
but
on?
You know, Frank brings up Lower Manhattan. You bring up the crisis and the fortunes. There were fortunes made, but
Right.
part of those fortunes were made because when you were able to buy some of these buildings and they were able to be converted to residential, Giuliani enacted something called the 421G, which gave 15-year tax abatement. I mean, full
Right.
tax abatement. Okay, now we have a city, and I was with Jeff today. Christine Quinn, he asks her about the 421As. We don't even have these tax abatements today. So even if you could build, the cost of running a residential building, what is it going to cost today?
A lot.
No. I'm just saying, Joel, the taxes.
No,
The taxes.
The
are
taxes
no
are going up.
But that's
they've
not the
just
whole
been
story.
raised
I mean,
again.
you
They're a
want to talk
tremendous
about the
percentage of
overall-
your net NOI.
Yeah, but
Because-
everything affects construction.
Right.
Okay.
Correct, because you can't make numbers work.
Right,
Exactly
you can't
right.
make numbers work. People are, I think you're perfect. You're basically saying something that David Lichtenstein said on my show a couple of years ago. He projected there was going to be fear in the streets in the end of 2008. He was correct. Unfortunately, part of it was his own business going down the drain. But the city has to work with the federal government also to move this. And, the same problem with the unions. Let's talk about the hospitality trade. You can't run a small hotel if you had the unions in there. Right. Because the cost of a dishwasher, restaurants in a union hotel, you're paying $22 an hour for a dishwasher.
You want to go deeper? You want to go deeper into the problem? Look at our municipal employees. Our municipal employees earn, on the average, in excess of $100,000 a year, with a pension and health plan that costs $37,000 a year.
Right.
Now,
That's from the citizens' budget.
we have a serious problem
Yeah.
because that's something which our taxes are going to continue to have to fund. Just the way the United Auto Workers had to look at their salaries, and we're saying the construction workers have to look at their salaries. The cost of taxation to pay for these municipal employees is a burden on every industry in New York, because when you build a new office building and you have to have $25 or $30 a foot in taxes before you pay the heat, the oil, and the door people, you have a serious problem.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2009 is going to be a year of readjustment and realignment. And I think that we were looking at the unions 2 or 3 years ago when we were booming, and there was not much progress made. I really believe there will be progress made at the talks that are going on right now. Or, as you say, this town could possibly go non-union. That'll be good, because the gap will be closed when this changes.
Well, in general, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, but I do think it's going to change, because if we get the stimulus package, and I didn't listen to the press conference today, but I'm hopeful that mortgage money could be released. Even a $15,000 incentive to buy a house.
I think with regard to the $15,000, I loved it, but if I didn't read the final, if they're saying that you have to recoup it, which was the original plan when on the first program last year, it had to be recouped over 15 years. You had to pick it back. Then it's not going to. You have to really give a tax credit. It has to be a credit that has to be given permanently. The one that was done last year, which provided this to the first-time homeowner, if you earn less than $150,000, you had to pay it back over the next 15 years.
I would say give everyone an interest-free mortgage for 30 years.
But to pick up on your,
you'll absorb the market.
Pick up on your comment. This is the right time for structural changes, which we haven't had in a while. Industry, government, to really take all this stuff that's grown out of whack and put it under control. And, you know, I hope the government's going down that path. I'm a little dubious if they're really going that direction.
Government is in private industry is going to have to. It's for survival.
No, we are absolutely all trimming our own sails. There's no
and we're
question about
hopeful
it.
that we'll, survive.
In summation, because there was an ad in the Sunday Times by a home builder saying, as opposed to firing people, maybe cut some of the salaries. Maybe put people on a 4-day work week.
In California, right?
Right, and it was basically saying, don't fire, don't cut your bottom line. Make sure that you can keep employees over there. And I think maybe with some union work, maybe some government institutions, the real estate and the construction business might be better in 2010. And that's the right time to buy an apartment. I'd like to thank Jeff Levine, Tony Dolce, Joel Pickett, and Frank Siami. Next week, we'll talk about the residential developments, residential market in New York. See you next week.
Major funding for these programs is provided by grants from Capital One Bank and Perfect Building Maintenance, Murray Hill Properties, SJP Properties, Cushman and Wakefield, Greenberg Traurig, LLP, New York Community Bank, Bank of America, Kilroy Metal Products, New York's Window Company. Additional funding is provided by Akron Gold Brothers, LLC, Briarwood Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, City Investment Fund, Essex Capital Partners, Excel Realty Advisors, First American Title Insurance Company of New York, Gemini Real Estate Advisors, GVA Williams, Hal Fettner, Durst Fettner Residential, Herrick Feinstein, LLP, Helmsley Spear, Jackson Development Group, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Institute at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, John Katzimatidis, Massey Knackle Realty Services, Madison Realty Capital, Marcus and Millichap, M&T Bank, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Knight Frank, Muss Development, Palin Enterprises, Rosenthal and Rosenthal, Signature Bank, Sterling and Sterling, Stephen Napolitano, Stonehenge Partners, Studley, the Moynihan Group.